There isn't anything that you need to look for or to do when you want something to change in your life. The more that you try to fight to make things different, the more that you will exaggerate your problem set. When you're trying to change something, when you're actively trying to change something, you're utilizing your left brain to try to actively engage with an issue to turn it into something else. But when you're using your left brain to actively engage with an issue to try to turn it into something else, you can only use left brain properties, which would be to reach back into your past, into your foundation, into your experiences, your references that you have, in order to search for a strategy with which to make this thing that you're experiencing right now into something different. But how could you possibly create something different, something new, something that is unexpected, something that is novel towards your experience of this reality by reaching back and looking through the things that have happened before? How can you create something that you're unfamiliar with by only working with the things that you're familiar with? So if you're trying to change something, you're utilizing everything that you have in terms of your experience in the past to try to change something. But often, when you do this, what you're actually doing is you're engaging with the patterns in your left brain that have things to be familiar with. So realistically, you're building and strengthening the pattern that your left brain awareness is attempting to engage with in the first place. You're exaggerating your perception's awareness of the problem by trying to change the problem. You're exaggerating the problem, you're making the problem more pronounced to yourself by trying to actively do something about the problem. So, if instead we were able to approach things from more of a right brain, more of a creative, more of a non-outcome attached sequence of processing and possibility, can we begin to then allow for things to change? So instead, what could we do differently, right? How could we handle this differently? I think first it comes from the standpoint of showing up and knowing that it's allowed to look however it looks. And the way that it looks right now, whatever the thing is that you're perceiving, whatever the problem is that you're bumping up against, looks the way that it looks because it's supposed to look that way, right? We know that our brains are incapable of seeing everything that's going on around us. We even have formations that we've labeled in the spinal cord that specifically have that function. The reticular formation is a good example, an aspect, a neurologic bundle in your spinal cord that limits perceptual awareness. It filters incoming information. There are other centers within the nervous system that do this as well. We have parts of our nervous system that filter and limit the amount of information that we can take in, which means that at any given moment in time, we are passively ignoring a good amount of what's going on around us. The things that you're perceiving, the things that you are aware of, are also as a result of a chemical soup that's in your brain that's creating a reflection of what the incoming information is telling your nervous system via sensory input, whether that's your eyes, your ears, your sense of touch, or a whole host of other different ways that information can work its way into your nervous system. So that means that all around us at any moment in time there are novel experiences that are available. There are new things that we've never noticed before that are available to us. And we've never noticed them before because we get set into patterns of left brain functioning. We learn that from the people around us who teach us how to be when we're children. They teach us how it's appropriate for us to be and who it's appropriate for us to grow into and what sort of things it's appropriate for us to pay attention to, right? But there's a lot more going on than what is culturally accepted as appropriate that we have been taught to look towards. So instead, knowing that there are things around me that I don't know anything about. There are things around me right now that I don't know anything about. I have no idea what these things are actually like and what their functions are or what sort of impact they might have on my life. They're everywhere. These things are everywhere. And I don't know about them, and they're brand new. And you can think about that, and you can think, well, that's a little bit scary because that means there's a bunch of stuff around me and I can't even see it. But you can also notice that it's always been that way, and you're still fine, you're still here, you're still the way that you're supposed to be, you're still who you're supposed to be in this moment in time. So instead, could you utilize that as an opportunity? Sit with the fact that you don't know what's going on right now, because no one does, and no one ever has. Everyone has been working with the cemented references that are showing up to their nervous system that they can have awareness of, and saying, man, this thing is showing up, I sure hope that it's useful. Let me either write this down or share this with another person. And over time, enough of these concepts are acknowledged, enough of these novelties within people's awareness are acknowledged and shared, and then agreed upon, that we label those things as the facts or the truth that we look into in this world. But are they actually the facts or the truth of what we look into in this world? Or is it one person's perspective that enough people agreed with that now we call it a fact? Does that make it a fact? Or does that mean that enough people agreed with something and thought that it sounded good that we just follow that as the absolute truth of the way that things are? So if you want things to change in your life, know that you already have no idea what's going on. Even if you've been bumping up against this negative experience in your life, this thing that feels like it's holding you back in a specific way, you don't know anything about that. You know the experience that you're having, the sensory information that you're having about that information, about that situation that's going on, but you can't possibly know everything that has to do with the situation that you're experiencing. So accept that. Know in each moment that there is something that you are not paying attention to. There's something I don't know. There's always something I don't know. In fact, the majority of everything is something that I don't know. Even the things that people have taught me I should know and are cemented facts in the world, again, as we talked about earlier, you don't know because no one knows. Everything is made up. Everything is made up from someone's perception. Someone's subjective awareness at one point in time pointed them to something that was useful for them. And we have all these subjective awareness pieces now written down in textbooks because enough groups of individuals heard of that sentence that was describing what someone was subjectively experiencing within their nervous system, and they went, yeah, that sounds good. And then they began to look for that reference around them. And when you begin to look for a reference that someone else has experienced, you're attached to that same pool of consciousness that they're attached to, so you are likely to experience that same thing simply because you're looking for it. But what if you weren't looking for something specific? What if instead you showed up and you knew that you didn't know anything about anything that was going on ever? You were just there. You just know, I'm here because I'm supposed to be here, and I know that I'm supposed to be here because I'm here, and consciousness is moving through me, making these decisions that are leading me into each situation that I find myself in. I think that I may be actively making the decision to go in that direction, but if you trace that back, where is that decision actually coming from? That decision is coming from your consciousness as a whole. Your conscious awareness is filtering and bleeding into something that looks like a thought form that tells you, this is me and I need to go in that direction. And we get so attached egoically to the, oh, this is me part and I need to go in that direction, that we then forget the this is me thing that I'm holding on to here came from somewhere. It came from somewhere before I attached myself, that I see myself as, to that thing. And I don't really have any control over that. It just showed up because it was time for it to show up. So can I approach my reality in that same way? I just show up. I'm just here. I'm just here, and I know that I don't know anything. And whatever shows up is supposed to be what's showing up in the moment. even if I experience that as a negative thing, can I experience it as this is here because I'm supposed to be recognizing something about it, and I don't know what that is. Every time, even if you're absolutely sure that you know what it is you're supposed to be focusing on, come at it from the approach of, I don't know. I've found that if you're absolutely sure that you know what's going on, then you're wrong. Most of the time, you are, which is difficult for the ego, because you get latched onto, I'm doing it the right way, but no one's ever been doing it the right way. Everyone's been doing it in ways that have happened before. Everyone's doing it in ways that they have references for. That doesn't mean that they're doing it in the right way. That means they're doing it in a familiar way. But again, you're looking for something to change in your life, right? So then you can't do things in a familiar way. You have to do things in a different way. And the only way that you could ever approach things in a different way is by starting from the standpoint of saying, I don't know. I have no idea. And that's okay, because you can learn to sit with and be comfortable in that state of, I don't know. And you can sit there and you can recognize that new things show up for you when you stay in that place for long enough. When you can stay in that place for long enough of, I don't know what's going on, I have no idea how to approach this thing, I don't even really know the truth of any situation, then eventually something will come to you that seems different, and you may feel it coming from a different area as well. And that may be a foreign alien sensation at some point in time as well. There are locations where we're used to thinking. There are spatial aspects of our awareness where we're used to receiving thoughts from. I'm familiar with my thoughts when they come from this area. So familiar so that I don't even recognize that as being a thing. This is just what thinking feels like. But all of a sudden, I'm sitting there and I don't know anything about anything. And I've accepted and I've come to terms with the fact that I actually don't know anything about anything, and no one else does either. And then when I sit there, I notice, oh, I am having a thought come into my head, but it's coming from somewhere else. And I can begin to recognize the difference between those two things. Usually my thoughts come from up here in this area. I've never paid attention to that before, but my thoughts come from up here in this area. But as I'm sitting here, acknowledging the fact that I don't know, and just sitting in the I don't know-ness of that situation, a thought comes in that feels like it came from over here. I've never had that happen before. That's something new that shows up in your awareness, and it's, it may actually be happening that way. It may actually be happening that way, that you're receiving thoughts from different directions around the body. That's a possibility. Or this could be a way that your right brain is starting to try to communicate with your left brain. Your subconscious mind is trying to communicate with your conscious awareness that's closer to the surface by showing you you can experience things in novel ways. And those can be simplistic and little and not have to make large impacts on your decision making just yet. Because it's good to take baby steps. That's how we should learn things. We shouldn't jump off the cliff because all of a sudden we don't know, but something in our head said that we could fly, right? I don't have a lot of references for flying. I don't know if the angels are going to catch me if I jump off that cliff. But I can take baby steps. And a good baby step to notice would be, can I notice changes within my perceptual awareness of how my thoughts feel like they're coming to me? My thoughts typically, again, come from up here. But when I sit in that place of I don't know, they may come from anywhere else. And I can notice that those directions, those vectorings of information coming into the center it feels like me, are coming in unfamiliar, novel ways. And this is a way that we can begin to bridge and link right brain and left brain processes, right? Can I find a way where I can build neurologic pathways that become able to recognize things that are different instead of what we've been trained, which is to recognize things that are the same. So start with recognizing we don't know. I don't know. I never know, especially when I'm absolutely sure that I know, I don't know, right? If you get caught up in that too, that's a great time to notice. I'm really attached to this thing being right. So I'm probably wrong. Yeah. And then if I'm absolutely sure that I'm wrong, maybe it was right. Right? The confusion is allowed as well. So it really is that simple. Just sitting in a place where you don't know. And accepting that you don't know and learning to be okay with the fact that you don't know can really facilitate massive changes in your life. It can begin to move things in a new direction by showing you that things are the way that they are because you're operating within the framework of things that you're familiar with. And all that you need to do is start to find things that you're not familiar with. And if you can give your brain the consistent manner of introducing yourself to things that you're not familiar with, then you start to develop the feelers for that in your nervous system that start to look on their own in different directions, all around you, for things that I'm not familiar with. And as we discussed earlier, there's a whole host of things within our awareness at any given moment in time that we are being limited from being able to be aware of within our perceptual, senses, right? All of that could be accessible to you, or more of that could be accessible to you in different ways. And if it's showing up for you, and you're asking for it to show up for you in a different way, then you can assume that the way that it shows up for you is something that is useful, or at least it's attempting to be useful for you. Your brain is not trying to show you something useless. Your brain is trying to show you a new pattern that is relevant for you to pay attention to. It's relevant information for you to pay attention to, especially when you don't know what it's about. So I don't know. Then that's a good thing. All that I know is that these different experiences are coming up to the surface within my conscious awareness. This thing that's going on is making me feel this way. This thing that I'm noticing is making me think about this other thing. Can I just let that move naturally on its own without trying to tie it up and pull it in a direction that I want it to go? Can I recognize that my nervous system is trying to show me something, and when I don't try to force it to move in a direction, but instead I just relax, can I notice that it's already going somewhere on its own? Where is it going? If I engage with a problem, if I sit down to think about an issue or to work on an issue, can I notice that there's already something that's happening without me actively trying to work on that issue? If I just sit down and I enter that problem set, I focus my awareness on that problem set, can I then notice that it may be happening slowly, but there's already something that's going on? Whether it's that thoughts start to run through my head in a specific way, or I find my body moving in a specific way, or nothing happens, nothing comes up, and I sit there and I don't know, and I feel kind of empty and a little bit spooked, because that's not what I would typically think of as productive, but something is happening. These emotions might come up, and can I also just notice that those are there, and notice that perhaps those are useful as well. Perhaps this frustration is useful as well. Perhaps these things that I feel like are getting in my way are actually showing up to me because my brain tells me that these are relevant pieces of information for me to know. So that's it. Know that you don't know. I don't know either. Nobody knows. Nobody's ever known, ever, about anything. So can you do things in the same way? Can you approach things in the same way as a medieval alchemist would, coming into the lens of whatever your problem set is, with knowing, I have no strategies. None. I have no strategies. I don't know what's going on. I've never known what's going on. I have no strategies with which I can approach this thing. Every reference that I've ever had in the past isn't what I'm looking for, so I have nothing towards whatever I could do to deal with this thing. And if you approach it that way, then only new solutions can come to you. And if you want something to change, it has to be a new solution. It can't be something that's worked in the past, because then it'll just bring you back to an origin point that eventually leads back to where you are now, the difficulty, the issue that you have now. Because you used that strategy in the past to try to work with the problem that you have now, and all that did was get you to where you are now. So it's certainly not going to work a second time if it didn't work the first time. You need something new. You need something novel. You need something different. And that will only come from the place inside when you don't know anything. And the outcome, the answer, is allowed to be anything at all. And it's also allowed to be nothing. You're allowed to sit down and do these things and take time for these processes, and then nothing comes up. That's got to be allowed too, because you're not attached to an outcome. If you're attached to an outcome, again, you're looking back towards your references of how things are supposed to go when you finish a process. This is what things do when you finish a process. I sit down and I take these steps, and then I get the answer to the equation, right? Or I get the solution to the problem because I sit down and I took the time to do the things that gave you the solution to the problem. But again, if you're doing that, if you're looking for an outcome that you're familiar with, then you're not going to find anything except for an outcome that you're familiar with. I believe that's all that I have for you today. I hope that was beneficial, and I'll see you again next time. Bye.